Welcome to Forging Freedom Into the Fire, the podcast where men sharpen themselves and build brotherhood. I'm Zach Monroe, your host, and every week we dig into real stories, gritty adventures, and the mindset it takes to live free and lead strong. Pull up a chair by the fire and let's dive in.
Boom.
Okay.
Let the fun begin. Cheers. I'll drink some coffee to that.
Cheers. All right. Welcome to another episode of Into the Fire. I'm your host, Zach Monroe. Today I'm joined with someone who I have had the pleasure of being acquainted with the last couple years through a nonprofit program I used to work with. His name is Len Mackey. He has his own business called Ancient Earth Skills. He's based out of Potsdam, New York, right here. And so I've had the pleasure of seeing Len in action from doing the African drum circle to the teaching youth how to build fires to a little bit of everything. And I'm excited to have him on today because Len really just has this wonderful energy about him. And he has this unique personality, and he has this way about him that you just feel connected, and you want to just learn more. You want to learn his story, and you want to learn about his experiences and really his views and inputs. And so we're excited to have him on as the second episode guest for Into the Fire. So welcome, Len.
Hey, thanks, man. Super happy to be here. And, when I went to the car to get the tripod and all that stuff for the camera, my friend Bebe just said, "Hey, man, I want to come too." So this is Bebe. He's a sweet little buck that I called with my voice a few years ago, using grunts and bleats, mating calls for white-tailed deer.
Okay.
Oreocoilus virginius borealis. That'd be like the northeastern subspecies of whitetail. And so he came in really curious and gave me and everybody a big gift. So, yeah, super thankful that Bebe could be here too.
Yeah, well, welcome, Bebe. we're excited to have him. So what a better place than with a podcast about adventure through brotherhood, right? And so I think hunting is one of those activities where a lot of men have found brotherhood through hunting partners and family and so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah, my dad, that's really what got me into it. From the time I could walk, I was in the woods with him, hunting and trapping and tracking animals and, trapping beaver. He taught me how to skin my first deer when I was about 7 years old. I was like so careful. I didn't want to nick the hide,
Mm-hmm.
and he made me buy my own traps when I was 7, so that I would have my own stuff to work with, and taught me a lot about, taking care of things. And so, and also being in the woods, for him, that was Dad's church. Like he was baptized Catholic, went Protestant, then he's like, nah, I feel closest to God or whatever it's called when I'm in the woods, and that was really his happy place and his solace, and that's really what he shared with me, from the time I was just a wee bugger, many mornings early in the boat on the pond and, stalking deer or, trekking through the swamps, just a lot of fun. And, for me now, that's like my happy place. Hunting is my sacred time. It's my time to go in the woods and just be and listen to the birds and try not to piss them off, Try not to annoy the red squirrels so that I don't get busted.
Yeah, I hear
and
you.
then the deer are like, who's over there?
That's funny. So we, my wife and I, we took our 2 kids hiking yesterday afternoon, and we went up to Big Crow Mountain, which is just on the other side of Keene in the Hurricane Wilderness Forest area. And we're hiking up, and of course you hear the crow, right? And so I'm like, I need some good folklore here to tell my kids. And they're like, and so we're hiking, and I'm just trying to keep them occupied and not fight with each other. So I'm like, you guys know the story of Big Crow, how it got its name, right? They're like, no, how? And I'm like, Big Crow, because there's a big crow that lives on this mountain. And the legend says that if it lands in front of you and you look in its eyes, you've got 7 years of bad luck.
Oh no.
And they were like, oh no. So they were looking around
Doom
like
and
for the
gloom
crow.
story.
But it was cool because it was one of those hiking activities that keep them engaged, but they were also like looking for the crow.
They're like,
They're
don't
like,
look at the
I
crow.
don't look
Where
him in
is
the
it?"
eyes.
Don't
My
look
daughter's
him
like,
in the
what happens
eyes.
if he lands in front of you? I'm like, look away, close your eyes. But it was so funny. And it's like, what a great experience to be outdoors on a beautiful fall day and just have this like wonderful memory. And like, I'm sure when my daughter's 18 or looking back, she's going to be like, Dad, that was so ridiculous. And now I'm afraid of crows. I'm like, no, just that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stories about, wildlife and how they came to be the way they are, and there's different stories across cultures, some have to do with like the turkey vulture or the raven, and they have similar stories about those birds. One of my favorite stories is the story of the raven. The people of the earth had, their fire went out. They had no fire, so they had no way to, warm their water and make their medicinal tea or cook their food, or no hearth to gather around, nothing to warm their bones or, their life, their shelters, and they were in trouble, so the birds were like, oh, these humans need some help, so what are we going to do? And so the birds got together and they're like, okay, well, if we fly as high as we can up to the sun and grab a piece of the fire of the sun and bring it down to the people, then, we could help them. And, so different birds volunteered. The eagle's like, well, I soar high in the sky and, I have powerful wings that will bring me up to the sun and maybe I can get a piece of the sun. So the eagle flew up as high as he could, flew and flew and flew, and almost got there, and his feathers were burned to ash white, so his head was mottled white. When he returned, he bore that, the heat. And so the other birds are like, well, maybe I could do it, so the hummingbird tried and flew as high as he could to get a little piece of the sun, flying as fast as he could and bringing it down to the people, but he just couldn't get high enough and close enough. And so the raven stepped up and said, well, I will do it. I will try. I will do this for my people. And the raven at that time, as the story goes, he had rainbow feathers and a beautiful melodic voice, And so Raven said, okay, I will get the fire for my people. And so Raven flew and flew and flew as high as he could, and hotter and hotter and hotter, until finally he got as close to the sun as he possibly could, and he gets one bite of that fire and brings it down in a smoking spiral all the way down to the earth. He came and he brought the fire to the people and put it in their teepee fire structure and warm their shelter so they could cook their food and make their medicine and gather together and tell stories and share life and love by the fire. And so it was his free will to make that choice, for his people and to bring that fire to them. And as a result, his feathers were burned black, charred, and his voice is now more like a squawk than the beautiful melody he once sang. But still, when you look at their feathers in the sun just right, you see that rainbow and the magic that he still carries. And so that's a wonderful story, and I've definitely told it, done better renditions of that. But the point being, like what do we do for our people? What do we do? What does our heart tell us to do? And that's really what keeps me going back into the woods and keeps me hunting and keeps me following, the path of the deer and listening to the birds. And, the news is pretty bad. It makes me pretty sad or mad or angry, or I feel helpless, or, any number of emotions. And,
Mm-hmm.
So I much prefer to get my news from the birds, and they'll tell me a lot about how I feel in that time. If I go into the woods angry or upset, they'll fly away. Beep, 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 beep. Watch out, he's coming, But if I'm calm and relaxed and, as you said before we started the podcast, like, I am free of time right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the pressure of that one single line, single pathway rush,
Mm-hmm.
that is so unnerving to the wildlife, so when I can tap into that space of no time, destination, then I'm free to wander and find that peace and walk with that, And so I think that's why I hunt, and that's why I'm in the woods, and that's why I do what I do, because somewhere it makes my heart happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like teaching drumming to the kids
Mm-hmm.
and getting them dancing and expressing themselves and out of their comfort zone. They're not going to hurt themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but they might be a little scared to step up and do a little dance, but it makes them stronger for it, and they're more confident and more inspired and empowered to be themselves and to enjoy their life and celebrate life,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's great. And, that what a wonderful sample of Len Mackey. And so you have this art of storytelling that I think is really captivating. And I've always appreciated that about you, and the way that you can tell that and share that with people. And in my experience, it's been with kids, and watch their reactions. And it's, it's in a way that it's engaging, and it causes them to question things, right? And so you've spent, would you say, most of your life in the woods? And I'm just kind of curious to hear from you, like, what has the woods taught you? What has the outdoors and living this life of wild and foraging and hunting really taught you?
Yeah, a lot of love and respect for the earth, especially. Growing up, my family, all our family vacations, because we didn't have tons of money, were camping trips. So we would spend a week or two, or eventually my grandmother took us camping, and every year we would go a little bit longer at this campsite, Blake McNeil. And so my whole childhood was spent outdoors in the summer, foraging berries and fishing and playing in the woods, and so for me, it's just like really taught me an appreciation for the simple things in life and the little things, and just watching a worm crawl across the mud and leave a track there that's so much like that wandering river, that mud is bedded in. It's like, wow, this is amazing. Life is happening. Just to see, the toads that are hatching, and then the perch that are coming up and feeding on the toads, and, just life and energy transforming, life and death, and just the evolution of energy, it's taught me so much about that. Just, in taking a deer's life, it's hard, man. It's never easy. It's always painful. It always hurts a little bit, because, there have been times where I lived off grid, and, I'd only see like the plow truck or the mailman or the farmer. And so, the animals were as much or more so my neighbors than people, because I would see them more often,
Mm-hmm.
And, so to kill a deer that I see regularly and that I'm familiar with, it just hits a place like, wow, that's my neighbor, I had a dream one time, and it was really powerful. It really hit me so hard, I've been working on hunting turkeys and getting really close to them. My goal actually is to touch a turkey, because it's way harder to touch a turkey than to shoot one with a gun, or, I've been using a Osage orange stick bow and getting really close. Still haven't taken a shot yet. Had opportunities, let them pass by. It's a game of how close can I get to the turkeys. That's what I've been playing. But I know one day when it feels like the right moment, I will either touch that bird or harvest one with my bow. It's a goal, a life goal, and I'm getting close. I'm learning a lot from my failures. But I had this dream one time that I was hunting, and I fired my arrow at this turkey, and when it turned, because it turned and its fan had its back to me, so I shot through the fan, right through the back of the bird. And when the bird turned around, it was a teenage boy. Whew. Man.
That's heavy.
It hit me hard.
That's heavy.
It hit me so hard. And because that's what he is. If I were to shoot a Jake, that'd be a juvenile male turkey. Maliagra scolopovu sylvestris, right? Our eastern wild turkey. That would be a juvenile, a teenager, and that was the dream. And so, yeah, it hit me pretty hard. And I feel like, that's kind of part of it is, having that respect for the animals and the earth, and being a caretaker of the earth as much as I can, like when I'm harvesting trees for a bow, maybe I would harvest the trees that have overgrown an apple. Like where I was living before at Birdsfoot Farm, there was a bunch of black locusts that are beautiful trees, very hard wood, they're very rot resistant, they make good bows, and they were shading this apple. So I said, okay, for this bow wood, I'm gonna harvest these locusts and give this apple some more light, so then there's more apples for the deer, there's more apples for the people, there's more apples for everyone. So that's another thing that being in nature, has taught me as a human, as our species, being a human, this lifetime or whatever you believe, right now, here I am, a human. What is my job? It's not just to take from nature, but to take care of her, In 1491, I don't know if you ever read that book, excellent read. It's about the time before Europeans came to North America. And at that time, there was actually more protein being produced on the continent by nature from the buffalo and the fish and the other wildlife, like, the carrier pigeon flocks of billions of birds, and, fish. So you could catch a tonnage of fish into a tributary, one of the tributaries to like Lake Champlain, in like an afternoon. Because the native people tended the earth, so they would, say, plant burdock or nettle or encourage the native and wild species that were edible and that were medicinal and that, would feed not only themselves but also the wildlife. And so nature teaches me a lot about myself. A lot about how I feel that day. If the birds are sensitive, the squirrels are sensitive. If I move too quickly or hurriedly or nervously, they feel the pressure of that and they're like, whoa, why is this guy moving here? He's in my space. What's going on? So I can learn a lot about Len by being in the woods, and it's definitely a huge part of my life because, the gifts it gives to me, you know, not just in the form of like food and, you know, friendship and kinship, getting to know the deer. Like one time I was living in this cabin in Old DeKalb, on a dead end dirt road. And, you know, at the time I was playing music for the modern dance here at SUNY Potsdam, for their theater department. So I would go home and I would practice music every night, you know, and I would sit on the porch. It was screened in porch, thank God, because it was on the edge of like the 23-mile Beaver Creek wetland. You step outside and I was like,
mosquitoes will pick you up and carry you away. Yeah,
it was like the Twilight Zone, you know.
Hey, I live in Louisville, so Louisville is known as the swamp, so it's no different out there than Beaver.
Yeah, so thank God for the screened-in porch. But I would sit out there and play every night and sing and play the balafon, you know, West African style marimba or xylophone. And one night I was practicing and I went in to cook dinner. You know, I was cooking some eggs and lots of garlic to keep the mosquitoes away, you know. And when I went in, this coyote started to sing, like the cabin was up on a little hill, maybe 15 yards from the road. And the coyote in the dark was there in the road singing. And I was like, whoa, he is close. I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, wow. And he sang, and he sang, and he sang, and he sang. And Zach, he sang to me for like over half an hour right there.
It's incredible.
And I was like, what is going on? I'm like, this is amazing. Wow. What a huge gift, you know? And so I was like, well, I want to sing with him. So I go, you know?
Yeah.
And he shut right up. And I was like, oh, shit. I did not mean to do that. And I was like, oh, man.
You were in the wrong pitch.
Yeah, I guess. He was like, oh, no.
Right.
And yeah. But anyways, a few minutes later, he starts singing again. But only this time, he was out in the field, probably like, judging from the sound, it was pitch black. But he was probably 80 to 100 yards out in the field. And he continued to sing, and he sang for over an hour to me. That night, he serenaded me. And I was just like, whoa, man, this is amazing. How is that even possible, you know? And, you know, animals are sensitive. Dogs are sensitive, you know, all creatures, humans, right? But especially the animals that are relying on their instincts more than like their analytical mind to solve their problems, you know, or to dictate their life or, you know, their habits of feeding or reproducing or whatever, you know. And so maybe he could feel my vibes and he didn't feel threatened. And, you know, at least that is my wish, you know.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was running with a dog on that farm. This sweet dog, Sammy, he was a sheepdog. And, you know, we were talking about how, you know, Grandfather Stocking Wolf said, everyone and everything are my teachers, you know, like every person, every deer, every bird, every blade of grass or the dew or the river or the wind or the sun or, you know, can leave an impression on our heart and our mind, you know, and can convey some meaning to us, you know, that may be important to our life, you know. And so I tried, you know, adopt that philosophy that everyone has something to teach me, you know. And Sammy taught me a lot, you know. The poor guy, he was, you know, had the instinct to herd sheep, but the farmers didn't have time to train him, so every time he'd get off, he would go and rip the ass end out of one of the sheep, which is not very good, you know. I mean, he never seriously injured any of them, but he definitely tore a lot of hair, and it was not, the sheep were not happy, neither was the farmer. So he would get locked up again, and as soon as he'd get off, he'd go and do the same thing. It was like he was angry, you know, and frustrated, you know, like any youth that doesn't have something better to do, like myself as a kid, you know, like throwing rocks at abandoned cars instead of like carving a bow drill kit or learning drum or dance, you know. Like I was one of those kids that was bored and needed something better to do, you know. And So anyways, I would take Sammy off the chain and he would run with me, and his leash was such that he would run in front of me, so he couldn't see me. His eyes and stuff were in front, and he couldn't even see me out of the periphery of his vision. So I'd be running with him, Zach, and he would know when I wanted to go right, when I wanted to go left, when I wanted to go straight through the fence. Like, in the instant that I had the thought, he knew. And I was like, what is going on here? I mean, like, this is incredible. Really? Is this really happening? And I'm observing it. I'm like, holy cow, this is really happening. Even the point where we came to this one spot and I was like, do I go right or left or what? And Sammy was like, what are you doing? Make up your mind, dude. Yeah. Are we running? Let's go. And it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible.
Instinct is incredible. So I have a border collie, Great Pyrenees, and so obviously her instinct is to also herd, but she's never, we don't have sheep or anything like that, but I do have 2 little kids. So for the last 10 years, that has been her herd. It's been fun to watch my kids just take off running, and then to watch her come up on the right side of them and nudge them to the left to basically herd my kids. So it's like, it's cool to see that she still gets to utilize some of that instinct, even though it's not natural instinct for the purpose that it's doing. She's getting to utilize some of that. But she does the same thing. So I love to take her hiking with us. And she is very instinctful in that she can see the path. Right? She knows it. She sees it very well. It's amazing to watch dogs hike. I don't know if you've ever been hiking with a dog before, but it's like they can make split-second decisions of where they're going to step. Most dogs. I'm not going to generalize and say that all dogs do, but for the most part, they can sense
really aware
the natural path, even a herd path.
Yeah, and I think that, even us domesticated humans still contain all of the instincts that our ancestors relied upon, and I think that's one thing that, being in the woods has really taught me a lot too, is that, the more quiet my mind is, the more sensitive I can be, and so being in nature definitely helps me sometimes. Like I've,
see if you can just bring that mic over just a little bit.
Yeah,
picks it up a little bit clearer.
I do programs
that's
for students and kids and all ages, and I remember just kind of getting to the spot, and I was doing a tracking workshop for the Adirondack semester at St. Lawrence University. And so there's this big sand pit. It's like the biggest, most wonderful tracking box. I mean, you can see all kinds of stuff, turkey and raven tracks, and you can see the little bowls of where the grouse have dusted their feathers and the other little birds have dusted their feathers, or where a bobcat sprang into the bush trying to catch a bird or something like that, or where the coyotes have gone through, or where a couple laid their blanket down and had an afternoon picnic, and it's pretty fun. So anyways, before that happens, I usually hide somewhere in the landscape, and I remember laying down and my heart was like, don't, because I'm getting camoed in and, don't want to be seen. And also okay, they're going to be here in 10 minutes. And even though I've taught these things so many times, I still get excited, anxious, not scared, but butterfly nerves, before I teach or before I speak. It's always present, every time. And so I'm laying there and I finally get everything all settled in, and I'm laying on the ground and my heart is boom, 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 boom. And I'm sweating and I'm wow, maybe I did that a little fast, a little hurried, and so sitting close to nature, I was there maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and then finally my heart rate settled down, everything calmed and relaxed, and I was okay, there, boom, now I feel more settled, more relaxed. So nature really teaches me how to relax too.
Do you do You strike me as someone who might study or do like breathing techniques. Is that something you're familiar with? Like a buddy of mine recently put me on to the Wim Hof breathing techniques, which is done by Navy SEALs to help them be able to be clear-minded, to be calm, especially in like moments where they need to make split-second decisions and be clear in their mind in their decision-making and under stress, under high levels of stress. So I've been practicing that. I'm still very early in. I'm maybe 2 weeks, but it's incredible how much your breathing helps your body and your mind just kind of relax and just find this focus of clarity. I never realized. Like I said, I'm learning all these new skills and techniques, and it's great to connect with all these different people because this is the stuff that I'm learning. And it's like I might not have ever thought about breathing techniques in the past, where now it's like I'm just being open-minded and I'm trying that, and I'm like, this is incredible. So do you have anything? Like, do you do breathing techniques?
I've heard of Wim Hof, and I've done it a couple times with a friend, and I was like, wow, this feels amazing. And it's definitely on my bucket list. I've done other kinds of breathing exercises, like studying yoga for a long time since I was a teenager, and, the benefits of just a deep belly breath. Like if you watch the way a baby breathes, or, an animal, a pro athlete, someone who lives still primitively in the woods, like their belly is what's moving, not their
chest,
upper chest. That's our fight or flight response, and it's almost like we're trained from moving so fast in our modern day to stop, breathe into our belly, and remember. And it takes training to kind of retrain that mechanism. And they teach a breath at the tracker school, called breath to surrender, where you breathe in, you hold the breath, and you let it out really slow. And let it wash down through you like a wave. I feel it from my head to my toes like a wave down my spine. And you surrender all thought, expectation, time, destination, emotion, words, all bits of tension. And it's a way to just completely clear your mind, even just for an instant. And, it's a great way. If you're in nature, you need to make a decision, your emotions are like busy, how to just stop and completely reset. And it's like pushing a button, like, pulling that trigger, pushing that trigger, flipping that switch of.
It's one of those basic hunting skills.
Yeah, it's
right.
Like,
you have to be able to take that deep breath before you take your shot. So you're still, you're calm.
Yeah.
Right. Your sight's focused.
Yeah, it's very, very, it's essential. Yeah. And, and you can do different types of breathing for different exercises or for different purposes. You can do different exercises, like breath of fire is a good one in yoga. They call it skull polishing breath, like it oxygenates your brain. So it's going to like refresh, it's going to oxygenate your cells. It changes your blood chemistry just by breathing. I have a fitness online course called The Couch Potato to Wild Critter. And it teaches people that's the first thing is breathing. Like breath is number one. So breathing into your belly, the lower half of your lungs, you actually have 2/3 more surface area. So you have 2/3 more energy for life, for your respiration, that inspiration, to help make some perspiration if you're working out, or whatever you're doing. And, that breathing, we're basically like a steam engine. We're burning energy. We have a fire inside us all the time, and every fire needs fuel and oxygen and the warmth, right, to get going. So we have the warmth, and so we feed it the fuel and the oxygen, and then we can control our body temperature or, things like that, and help us enter a different state of mind, and if you breathe with a belly breath, you can be, if you're busy in the brain, you're stressed. Like when I'm stressed, I try to remember to breathe deep, and it slows our brain waves down, from like the beta chatterbox, like, oh my God, how am I going to pay the bill? Or last week I fucked up, or, oh, I wish I hadn't have said that, or dang, I would have done that different, or, oh, what about this coming up, the future, the past, all of those different things, regrets or fears, little anxieties. And so if we breathe, we can just be like, okay, just breathe. And eventually the deeper we breathe, the more fully we breathe, the quieter the mind gets, and the more relaxed we become, and so just by focusing on that breath, like if that's all we did and put our conscious attention on it, it would lower our brain waves and put us into a meditative state. And it doesn't take very long for you for anyone to be able to do that if they're breathing the right way, and, it can bring us from that beta down into the alpha state, which if we're in nature for a minimum of like 3 days, 4 days, we naturally start to sync our brain waves into that alpha frequency. So my feeling is that really is our baseline frequency, and that the beta is the fight or flight, but it's become more of the modern baseline of stress, And so just being in nature, you're an alpha. And then, if you can relax deeper, quiet your mind even more, you could even be in theta. That's like when we repair our bodies when we sleep. We replenish our neurotransmitters. We have our dreams. We're in that state. And then even delta, that's like zero thought. That's like our deepest dreamless sleep. And so they've hooked shamans or medicine men, medicine women's brains up to electroencephalograph to detect the brainwave frequencies. And they found that when they're doing their work, they're in delta. They're in zero thought. So, but they're awake. And so, like any kind of electrical channel, the less, static there is in the line, the clearer the radio signal is for receiving and for broadcasting. So being in nature and dealing with ancient kinds of technologies helped me to relax my mind. And, my goal is to be in that relaxed, lucid state. That doesn't mean that I'm like not stressed about, oh, I got to fix the car, or, this or that, or, little things that come up, but it helps.
There's a lot of balance that goes into it, right? So we live in this modern world, and it's easy to be distracted, right? So your phone might be dinging every 2 minutes, or
turn that thing off.
Yeah, just turn it off.
Unless
Seriously.
I'm waiting, expecting someone an important call. I'm like, it's
turn
on
it off.
Quiet mode. Yeah.
Because it's so easy with technology and just modern society right now to be easily distracted. And so I've been reflecting a lot on myself, and I'm someone who is for a long time was very tech driven, right? I worked in an office, I worked on a PC, my phone was tethered to me because it was my work, it was my social, it was everything. But this last year or so, I've actually been free and clear of social media. I've been practicing when I got home from work, putting my phone on the counter and trying to leave it there, right? And not being distracted because I needed it for work, or I needed it for connection, or my calendar, or whatever the case may be. And so I've really been practicing that in the last year. And let me tell you, how clear I have been in my mind is incredible. The less noise I've been picking up from, dramatic Facebook posts, or the polarization in our society in politics, or, whatever it is. It's like I've just been free and clear of a lot of that. Like the news. I used to love to wake up in the morning and watch the news. And like, I still like to try and understand what's going on in the world, but like, I don't thirst for it anymore. I thirst for this connection in conversations and just like authentic, like, discovery and learning new things. Like that's one of the things that has helped me. And I'd love to share that. I'm not, I don't make any recommendations. That's something that I like to do and it's helped me, but it's like, hey, listen, if you can try bits and pieces, everybody's going to find something different that helps them. Mm-hmm. And so, I was talking to a buddy who was in a similar situation. He felt the same way. His life was very similar. His career was very similar. And he's like, how did you do that? And I said, you just have to really push yourself, right? Mm. You have to get that muscle memory. And it only takes, 3 or 4 times of doing something repeatedly before you start to really pick up that practice or that habit, right? And so that practice of just coming home, taking my phone out of my pocket and putting it on the counter, right? Or just completely deleting your account. Now, I'm back active today, but it's for a sole purpose, and it's not a social purpose. It's to share what I'm doing here, and that's it.
To help people.
I just want to share what I'm doing with Forge and Freedom in these types of conversations and connecting people to hopefully join our brotherhood and in this community we're building. And so that's really my only purpose of it. Outside of that, I really have no interest in what's going on. I'm more interested in these real authentic connections. And so it's been incredible. And nature is a part of that for me too. I think that I've also learned so much from being outdoors, much like you. Actually, so you mentioned Blake McNeil Campground. I actually grew up camping there myself. Yeah. Riding bikes and fishing and swimming. And what a wonderful...
So fun.
It is such... if you've never camped at Blake McNeil, you should definitely look it up next camping season or even a nice fall. I don't know if they're still open. I don't know when they close, but just an incredible remote place. And I appreciated those experiences as a kid growing up there and in different places too. So I used to go to up into the Adirondacks with my grandfather fly fishing.
Oh, fun.
And so, part of some of these conversations that I like to have, it's like some of these pure, authentic conversations came from those moments. Probably like you and your father in the woods, hunting or tracking.
Oh, yeah.
You learned so much in just those outdoor-based activities than you can with this sitting in front of us, right? Or
and
whatever it may
that's
be.
Another thing, that nature teaches me a lot too, is not to be too one-pointed focus, but to have a peripheral perspective, in life, in the way I walk, and the way I move. If we focus in here, our mind, our consciousness is limited to this sphere of awareness, maybe only a few feet from our face, maybe closer, right? But as soon as we're out here in like this kind of they call the soft vision of the samurai, or owl eyes or splatter vision or wide angle vision or soft vision, that's a way to relax the mind, quiet the mind, and I think like that's the distraction of the phone, is like it's so focused on all the little problems or the stress or the dramatic post or the, somebody wanting to get you to listen to them for whatever reason, and it could be a good reason, so, and it can be challenging to filter those things out, and definitely one of my favorite ways is just put that there for now. Like I use that now for like video and to check on my people and, try and encourage people to tan deer hides and, make fire and stuff like that, definitely, it's a powerful tool, can be a powerful tool, can be the biggest distraction, like my teacher, Tom Brown Jr., Dad was the first one to really introduce me to the woods, my father, Len Mackey. And then I started doing sweat lodges when I was about 19. With a local fellow, Joe Longshore, who had learned from Tom Brown Jr., who had learned from grandfather Stalking Wolf, the Lippin Apache scout and medicine man. And, that connected me so deeply to the earth. And, and Tom, I later went to tracker school and spent, every last dime and penny traveling there and learning as much as I could there. And also at root school in Vermont and St. Croix, studying earth skills there, survival skills, and in Belize, studying jungle survival skills, and California and up in British Columbia, teaching skills and stuff, and just trying to learn as much as I can everywhere, and so Tom, just to kind of loop back around to, the original thought, trail there, the tracks we were just following, he would say that in any situation or in a survival situation, and really in any situation, the mind can be our biggest detriment, our biggest enemy, or our greatest tool. And he was named the Tracker, nicknamed the Tracker. Tom Brown Jr. was nicknamed the Tracker because I think by the time he was 16, he had cracked his 600th tracking case. Like, he found hundreds of people from the time he was, single digits. He started tracking people, and he would find, the lost hunter dead sitting on the log with his rifle in his full winter gear from the shock and, the paralysis of that and, hypothermia, because the mind would just be like, oh my God, I'm lost. And I've been lost before. That panic is real, man.
Me
It's
too.
like, holy shit, it just washed over me, and I got to sit down, quiet myself and be like, okay, no, actually I know which way is this way, and I'm not lost. And, and he would find often the lost children would be like buried in a pile of leaves, or, and they would have done whatever they needed to satisfy their needs to get warmer, or, drink the water or eat the berries, or, they wouldn't hesitate to crawl in the pile if they were cold. They would just instinctively do that. So their mind wouldn't interfere, it would be a tool of that life, and, preserving that life and maintaining that life. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So the phone, the modern technology, the mind, they can go both ways, and definitely the more distracted I am, like the less happy I am, I think, sometimes, because I'm like, oh, that thing that I have no control over is so sad, or that it's so frustrating, or, whatever. And
so I'd like to go back real quick, because you made a really good point about how the mind can be this powerful tool, but can also be basically your enemy too, right? And so one of the things that I'm trying to cover too, and some of the questions we're trying to answer, is what does it mean to be a man in today's society? I'm actually following this guy right now. He's on this journey cross country. His name's Jason Doyle, and he's walking 3,000 miles from Long Beach, California to Long Beach, New York, searching for the answers to this question. And who knows, there's probably no right answer to it, but there's got to be some relevance and some theme to it, I believe. And so one of the things I think about is it's kind of been this quiet problem for men in today's society. And, I think I covered it in the last podcast with my buddy Adam. Some of it has to do maybe with toxic masculinity, or today's culture of, just suck it up, or whatever it may be. But it's like, where does that mentality that you just mentioned kind of tie into all of that?
How does it tie into being a man?
Yeah.
Like our mind and how we deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a good question that I, definitely on some level relate to every single day. I know when I get sucked into distractions, it's easy to do. That's when I feel like less of a man. I'm like, what am I really doing with my time? What am I doing with my energy? I'm not a child. I love to play, and I will always be a child, like Grandma Isis, I looked after her the last 4 years of her life, rented from her and helped her out. And, She was like, oh, the kids are coming over today. And I'm like, oh, who's that? And it's like, oh, Marv and Jean or whatever. And they're both 73, 75 years old. I'm like, oh, we're all a bunch of kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think maintaining that childlike attitude is essential, but the childish behavior is maybe the difference, and it can be hard to break habits. I think habits of addiction, be it to the porn or the phone or the movie or the sugar or the fast cars or the power trip or the whatever it is. Our brains are in some capacity designed to seek that good feeling, so for me, like using my mind to create the good feeling and pursuing that good feeling and doing the things that make me feel not just good in the moment, but that have a longer term thing. I think that's a big part of it. And there was something else that is just coming to mind now. Yeah. Doing the things that, like for me, engage my mind, like a breath or twisting some cordage or tanning a hide. There's a story of, maybe you've heard the story, the demon and the curly hair. Have you heard this story?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this is
a
really good one.
Please tell me.
I first heard it from my buddy Joe Longshore, the fellow I was doing a lot of sweats with. And so it's like this. There's this farmer, and, he's aging, and his farm is in disrepair. He can't keep up with everything. And, so this one day he's, on his way to the well and to get water, and there at the well is a wizard. And, the wizard is smoking his herbs and drinking from the spring, and the farmer goes to fill his buckets, and the wizard looks at him and he's like, oh, you look like your back is a little worn, my friend. He's like, yes, I work hard every day and I feel like I can never keep up with everything, And so he's like, well, you could employ this demon, this little man that I have here, and he can do all the work for you. And, he can help you solve your problems. And the farmer's like, really? I need help on the farm. I'll take all the help I can get right now. I have wheat to harvest and hay to put up and, horses to trim their hooves and, whole long list. He's like, yes, absolutely. So the wizard opens his bag and out pops this little man. And he says, okay, the only thing is, the one thing you must do, and he will do everything for you. He will solve all of your problems, but you must give him something to do at all times. He must have something to do. And so the farmer's like, okay, great. I have a lot to do. So the first thing is, carry this water. Okay, the little man says, and he grabs the water, and they walk back to the farmer's house, and the farmer's very happy. He's like, oh, yay, maybe I can actually accomplish something. So the little man's putting the water away, and he's starting to make his breakfast. So the little man says, what can I do now for you, master? And so the farmer says, okay, we need to harvest the corn, put it into, storage, and then we need to cut the wheat and separate the chaff from the grain, and, we need to feed the pigs. Yes, master. So the little man goes out the door, and the guy starts to cook his eggs. So they just start to get hot and cook, and so he's just about to sit down, and the man returns, and he's like, whoa, that was fast. And he says, yes, master, it is done. All the work is done. And he's like, wow, how did you ever accomplish all of that quickly, And so anyways, as he's standing there, he's like, okay, then we need to irrigate the fields, and we need to, call the roosters and hang the ham and the ham, and we need to hang him in the cold cellar. Yes, master. So the little man exits, and the farmer's like, oh, okay, great. Wow, I didn't know he could do that much that quickly. So anyways, he's about to sit down to his breakfast, and the little man shows up at the door, and he's like, it is done, master. And now the farmer starts to get a little nervous, and he's like, how is this possible? And he's like, what can I do for you, master? And so he hesitates, and he's like, and every time he hesitates, the little man gets a little bigger and a little bigger. And he's like, and it's starting to make the farmer nervous. And he's like, okay, well, plant the next season's crops in the field where we cut the corn and the wheat. Yes, master. So the man, who's now twice the size he was, walks out the door. And he's like, whew, boy, that was harder than I thought. I'm like, how am I going to think of these things to give this man something to do? So the farmer is like, okay, finally a little bit of peace. I can finally have my breakfast. So the man returns, and he's like, whoa. He's like, that was fast. He's like, yes, master, it is done. He's like, what can I do for you, master? And he's like, and the little man grows a little bigger, and he grows a little bigger till finally, every time he hesitates, the demon grows bigger and bigger and bigger until finally he's like towering over the farmer. What can I do for you, master? And he's, I need to get out of here. I need water. And so he grabs and he starts to run. And the demon chases after him. Master, master, what can I do for you, master? What can I do? And he's running and he's running and he's running back to the well. And he's like, where's the wizard? How do I handle this guy? And so the demon is charging towards him, and his heart rate is pulsing, and he's sweating. And there at the spring is the wizard sitting calmly, smoking his herbs and drinking from the spring. And he arrives and he's like, what do I do? I can't keep this guy busy. I can't. He's like, so the wizard looks at him and he reaches out and he plucks a hair from his beard. Ow! And he says, give him this curly hair, and tell him to straighten it. And so the farmer looks at the curly hair, and the demon is standing over him. He's like, straighten this. And so the demon grabs it and he's like, oh. And every time he straightens it, it curls back up, and oh, look at that. And wow. And he shrinks down smaller and smaller and smaller till he's back to his original size. And so the wizard says to the farmer, this little man is your mind. And the curly hair is what you give it to do. Mm. And so as you were speaking before, you find what you need that makes you happy, that brings you that joy, that keeps you engaged, that feeds your family, the things you do for love, to live, So always having something to give your mind. So if it gets frantic, sitting and just watching the breath, they call it vipassana, where you just watch the breath, and that is the meditation. You don't. And just whatever thoughts come and go, but you just always return to that breath. Or sitting in the woods, you return to that. I return to the wide angle vision as much as I can. And just breathe through the discomfort of holding that position for hours. Try not to move. So that way when the blue jay shows up, he's not going to bust me, because he doesn't detect that I'm even human. Hopefully, one of my life goals is to be more like a tree, so, so yeah, whatever helps, man, whatever that curly hair is, for me being whatever a man is like, that's what it is. It's like, how can I do the thing that satisfies the needs of, my soon to be wife and our family? Like those things will bring me peace.
Yeah, by the way, congratulations. Len's getting married on Friday.
No, it's not really a secret anymore, but we better keep it.
I can edit that. I can edit that out if you prefer.
No, it's okay. We are getting married on Friday, and that I think is an important part of being a man too is,
Yeah.
you know, honoring the feminine, you know.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, I've definitely made my mistakes and done things that aren't, you know, that are rude or, you know,
Sure.
that I would regret or, you know, or learn from, you know, not regret, but be like, whoa, I'm not going to do that again, you know.
Yeah.
And
That's part of being human.
that's part of being human.
Making mistakes and like not trying to deny, not trying to, like, the more open you can be with that. And that was part of my exploration when it comes to part of being a man. What is that? Being unapologetically yourself, for one, which I admire about you. I think you're an incredible example of just being unapologetically yourself. And it seems like you're at peace with, like, I don't care what people think about me, or, you know, maybe you do. I don't know, but that's how it appears. It's like, I'm just going to be myself. And it's like, you're grounded in that mentality where it's like, I can be who I am and it doesn't bother me what other people think, how they perceive me. Of course, we have this tribal mentality as humans, right? To want to be liked, to want to be respected, and to belong to a group sometimes. But also I look at it as a mindset is, yes, there's that component, but also the component of just being able to be yourself and comfortable with who you are. And then pairing that with being a man and being able to apologize and being able to make mistakes. And then on the other side of it, being able to just be open about any challenges or struggles, or just being able to understand emotions and not bottling them to the point where, you know, it's like a Coke and Mentos, right? You take a Coke and your problems are the Mentos, and you keep putting those Mentos in until, like, you can't put any more in, and then you put the cap on, right? And you shake it up, and poof, boom, the Coke explodes, right? And it's like, there's so many men in that position of the Coke and the Mentos, where it's like, that's not a healthy reaction for those emotions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I've definitely experienced that where, you know, my emotions bottle up and, you know, and those are the things that I'm like, wow, that was dumb. Why did I ever do that?
Yeah.
You know, I wish
Same.
I hadn't done that. I'm so sorry. And
Yeah.
And it's hard. I think that's part of being human. It's hard to, one, acknowledge that fully and not try to be defensive, you know, about it, but just be like, whoa, that really upset someone. Like, what I was thinking in that moment doesn't really matter that much now. You know, like, no, what really matters is making peace now.
Yeah.
You know, that's really what matters. And, you know, I strive to make deeper connections in life. And I know that, like, my emotions have frayed those connections. Or, you know, I had Lyme disease. I'm still working on doing homeopathy now for Lyme. And that has really affected my emotional state, you know, my ability to have a calm, balanced state, because I feel like this deep underlying stress, like the actual physical feeling of something consuming my brain and my nerves and my body and just shitting and leaving me with toxic sludge, you know. It's like the worst feeling.
Yeah.
You know, I've gotten Babesia and Bartonella and Lyme from ticks.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I feel like I need to, like, write all the people that I offended when it was, like, at its peak, because my brain was not working properly. And, you know, I'm sure I said things that people didn't want to hear, or that I would never have said that way, you know, without that stress. And I think that's part of it too, is, like, you know, like with my partner, wanting to provide for her, for our family, you know, and caretake her and caretake our children that we have one day that we want to have. And, you know, we as men, you know, I also need to take care of myself too, you know, and that is often forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to forget that. And, you know, but if I don't, like, treat my wound, if I don't put my air mask on, I can't help the person next to me. You know, if I'm not breathing fully and deeply and calmly and getting that energy, you know. And it's hard to identify like where that energy is spilling out, where I'm losing energy, or those distractions sometimes are, until they like build up, and then it's like, whoa, there's a blind spot there,
I've discovered in my own personal journey the root of a lot of my inability to stop putting Mentos in the Coke bottle was a communication problem. For me, it was a lack of being able to communicate clearly wants, needs, supports, whatever it may be. And it took a lot of inner reflection and moments of silence. I used to fear being alone by myself with my thoughts, because I was never sure what was going to creep up, right? It could be a confidence thing. Am I enough for my family? Am I enough for, my employer? Am I enough for anything, right? And so it took some of those battles, and I found that I was very good at distracting myself, right? TV, phone, music. I couldn't. The first thing I'd do, I get in the car, put on music, right? Because it's like that's one of the clearest places. And it wasn't till I started hiking solo, where being in the woods by myself, I'm like, something about that in the isolation was really good. And there were pockets where some of that would creep up, but because I was in that environment and some of that energy of being outdoors in the woods, in the earth, in the wildlife, I was able to channel that differently. And so I was able to do that reflection for myself. And I'm sure this has been beneficial to you in your life. And it sounds like in your experiences, some similarity, having to be able to channel that energy and redirect where maybe some of that self-doubt or, whatever issues were going on is starting to creep up. I was able to actually hear them for the first time in my life, and then use the positive energy around me to think clearer, to think deeper, and come up with maybe solutions or the ability to search for answers, or to come up with a plan to figure out how do I get the answer to some of these. But the root of it all came back to communication.
That's powerful, that realization.
Yeah. It was really powerful, and something I neglected for so much of my life. And who knows where it comes from? It could have been, maybe it was family, maybe we're bad communicators, or whatever the case may be. Just on more than a surface level communication, just the deeper communication. I've been connecting with a lot of men who are working in different elements of this space of men's mental health and men's wellness. And a lot of the conversations sometimes are going back to the boy, right? Because so much of who you are today is shaped and transformed through those years of your mind being a sponge, those learned behaviors as a kid, those experiences, both good and bad as a kid, shape kind of who you are today. And being able to identify with that boy, right, and connect those dots is really powerful to understanding who you are as a person today.
Yeah, that's for sure. We don't know who we are without looking back at where we've come from, or knowing where we've been.
And you've done this in your studies, not just only in your own personal, but I like that you've gone back to our ancient ancestors, because there's so much to learn about that and from them, right? And that perspective. One of my newfound joys too is framing and reframing different things in perspectives, and so I think that's really interesting what you have done in these stories and these learned skills that have been passed down, and I think that's really transformative. And I think we need more of that. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I think it needs to be shared on a grander level.
Thanks,
I think
man.
more people, I do, and I think, I'm hoping as I build this community, I'm hoping as we build this community with Forge and Freedom, that we can work together, right? So I can bring, hopefully the brotherhood that comes along with us and that are, getting into these side quests and adventures as we continue to grow and build, we can also come together with Len Mackey and Ancient Earth Skills and learn. I'd love one of the favorite things we did over the summer was the bow drill and watching the kids. Remember, it was right up. We were done for the day, but we had a group of boys. Out back, and they were not giving up until they could get the tinder lit, right?
The giant bow drill.
The giant bow drill, and there's two of them, so right? Fun? Yeah, it was so fun, but it was a challenge for them. And I'm like, every man still has that boy in him. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's fast cars, maybe it's hunting because that's what you do as a boy with your father, or fishing, or whatever it is that you experience. We all have that deep-rooted need to go back to being a boy, and connecting that naturally with what you have for skills, I think is so fun. And also, if you want to be part of outdoor adventure and you want to recreate in the outdoors, you should actually learn some of the essential skills that you have in your toolbox. How to avoid hypothermia, how to navigate.
Have a pace plan.
Yeah.
Like primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Have your primary goal is to get out of the woods and go back home and eat dinner with your beloved ones.
Always.
Your alternate plan is, I don't know where I am in the woods, but I have my compass and I know there's a catch feature to the east. So I'm going to head due east, hit the river, and that'll bring me to the road, and then I'll be safe. I'll get back to my people. Or contingency being, I have no idea where I am. I need to find the stars to tell me which way is north so that I can orient, or the east. Well, the sun rises in the east. Okay, I can head east in the morning. Or, I guess I won't be getting off this mountain tonight. It's cloudy. I have no idea where I am or where I'm going. So primarily we need to look after our body temperature. We need to be dry. We need to be warm. You can get hypothermic in July or August if it's raining and windy and you don't have the right stuff, and then, okay, well, it's too cold, or I need to build a shelter, or maybe there's snow crusted over the leaves, so I can't just build a pile of leaves and sleep in there quick tonight. I need to be able to make a fire, so knowing the trees and knowing the landscape and knowing how to make fire on the spot is awesome. I mean, it's...
And the gratitude that comes with that.
Oh, it's such an incredible feeling. It's totally orgasmic, man. Just like wonderful, expansive, beautiful feeling of like, wow, I just walked into landscape, harvest these things, and then made this friction fire with, all I had was a string and my knife, and so knowing all that is wonderful, if you can, so having all of your needs and having those pace plans when you go in the woods for all of them, like water, if you don't get out, well, you need to have ideally a single walled steel canteen that you can put water in, that maybe it's not ideal water, but you could boil that water in that single wall canteen. Or if all you have is a double wall stainless steel, well, you could heat rocks in a fire and boil water that way, so knowing the skills that can satisfy each level, of need is really, it's humbling, because to learn them, there's a lot of failure, but it's also very empowering. Having those skills in your back pocket. And each skill is a school in itself. Like, just learning fire, you could dedicate your whole life to that, or making baskets, or identifying the trees, or making wild fibers, tanning hides. I'm working on this mask and cape, so I can hunt deer dressed as a deer, but I'm a little nervous because I don't want to get shot, So, I'll just put usually when I have Bebe, I have a blaze orange hat and vest that accompanies him.
Yeah.
So we'll just put that on before we go out,
Just to be safe. Yeah. That's on private land, by the way. That's his own private land.
Only on private land, that's right. But, it's illegal to put a decoy out for deer, to bait them. But apparently, I was talking to the rangers, and wearing the deer costume wouldn't, or maybe you can put the decoy out in the day. I don't know. I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure from what they said, it's legal.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be breaking any laws doing that, which is important because I like my hunting license and all that stuff. So.
So if I see in the woods this fall if I see a deer in the woods with a blaze orange hat and a vest, I can call out to you.
Yeah, you can be like, Bebe and Len. Also, I did another one, a beautiful 8-point that I called with my voice, with grunts and bleats, and he came running in. You can see it on my Instagram, Ancient Earth Skills.
Yeah.
And he just lopes right up to the edge of the forest. Like, where are they? I'm going to be the one to breed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so fortunately, Bebe and Two Eagles get along. They don't usually fight very much. So, they're buddies. So it'll either be this beautiful Bebe or a small 8-point.
Perfect.
But I'm looking to make a whole family of deer. Actually, I got another one, Big Mama Sylvie, big doe I got last year during muzzleloading season, and then a little fawn that was harvested on a farm, a nuisance tag, because she was eating their medicinal plants, so they got a DEC tag. A little fawn named Medicine. She was eating the medicinal plants, so that's her name. Yeah. So we have 2 bucks, a doe, and a fawn, and I'm hoping to expand the deer family, and just we can hang out, do deer things, the things that are dearest, to our heart,
Yeah. It sounds just like you, and I love that.
Yeah, man,
that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, hey,
so I would love to participate with you guys and, share in any way I can. That's definitely my goal in life, is to connect people more deeply to the earth, to their own hands, empower them with real skills,
Yeah, you have a unique skill set, and I think there's a lot of people, whether you're a hunter, an athlete, a hiker, a kayaker, whatever it is, someone that just enjoys walking in the woods. You have a unique skill set that is valuable to teach other people, not only just from a knowing and a knowledge standpoint, but from a practical life case scenario, right? Where it's easy to get lost, right? And if you don't have
sure can be
the knowledge, you might have a map or a compass, but if you don't have the knowledge to use that tool, it's pretty much useless.
Yeah.
Not entirely useless, but it's not going to be as beneficial as having that knowledge and having the understanding.
Yeah. And, that's the thing, is like, it's the skills that we have that we carry with us no matter what we have with us, and if you don't have a knife, but you know how to break a rock to carve that notch in your fireboard, then you can make fire, and they're so fun to explore. And I think one of the other things that I really love about these earth-based skills is that it gives us time together like this.
That's huge. That's
where we just sit and we talk, and we might be grinding on a bow, or rasping on, a piece of osage or hickory, or, building our fire kit, or making pottery, or tanning hides. It's a lot of elbow grease. And so the body, the mind has that curly hair to play with. And then the other parts of our mind, the other minds, are the bits of our consciousness can share and connect. And I think that's what I love about these skills so much, is the time richness. One, that they require, that we have to spend the time to do them and to learn them. And that investing and seeing the results in itself is amazing, but also the time we get to spend with others and build our connections and invest in each other's lives and ourselves in that way, so the skills it's amazing. I feel we evolved to do that together around the fire, and
kind of back to our roots.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And in providing that opportunity, I think some people have to just be pushed out of the routine a little bit to break free from the isolation. Right. And so it doesn't matter. Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations lately, and it's guys are like, I've got a lot of friends. I got friends at work, or I've got high school friends, but it's that deep connectedness where you do something together and you get into conversation, or you talk about life's challenges, or you just have that like feeling of connectedness of brotherhood isn't exactly there, because we're still living in distraction to some degree, or we're worried about time, we're checking our watch, or we have to be. So being able to carve out just small pockets of time and dedicating yourself to break free of that isolation and join other men to feel comfortable being uncomfortable is sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
Especially when we live in a modern society where comfort can come fairly easy. But there is something about being uncomfortable. I'll give you a quick story. So I caught myself yesterday when we did our first side quest. We did the cold plunge and campfire coffee. I caught myself walking into the water with my Crocs on. And I'm like, because it was rocky and there was seaweed and it was going to be a little painful. I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm not practicing what I preach. I caught myself, and I was really happy I did. I'm like, no, you got to feel that uncomfortableness if you want to find yourself, right? And so I walked back, kicked my Crocs off. I walked back in the water. I walked through the rocks. I walked through the seaweed, which didn't feel great, but I was grateful for being there in that moment and feeling all of that, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
And even though I kicked a huge rock, I have a huge black and blue toenail right now. I think the thing's actually going to probably fall off and a new one's going to grow in. It is painful.
Yeah.
I hiked through it yesterday. Probably not the best decision. It wasn't until we were almost up to Keene the pain actually started to set in. And I took my sock off and I said, oh boy, this is going to be.
That's a good one.
Luckily, it was a short hike, but coming back down, I've hiked high peaks before, 10, 12, 14 mile hikes. But yesterday's hike, that 1.2 miles was like the longest hike I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too bad going up. It was just coming down, because when you're hiking, it's like, you're putting your weight and your pressure on your toes, right, for your grip. And it's like everything was coming down on that one toenail. And I was just like, oh.
I can relate.
During that pain, but I'm like, I'm going to get through this.
Yeah.
And I just I was grateful again in that moment to enjoy that beautiful fall view of the mountains, looking out across and seeing the Great Range and just seeing that wonderful fall color, and being there with my family in that moment. That once I got to the top, that pain had gone away. And then I put my hiking boot back on. I trek back down the mountain, and it seeps back in.
Yeah.
But it's just those moments of
pushing through
gratitude
the
and pushing through the discomfort and being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's hard, but that's what all exercise is and does for us. Like we endure. It's like I would say a lot in my fitness classes, my interval classes and stuff. Like, we die a little today to live a little more tomorrow. We put ourselves through this discomfort. We're a little sore, but we're stronger for it, and the other option is like, well, you could be sore from the workout, or you could be in pain from not moving. And I'm like, I think I would rather do the workout. I feel better. Yeah. But, I can relate to that, especially like
couch potato to wild critter.
To wild critter. Yeah. It's a corrective exercise, because everybody has some kind of imbalance. A leg is longer, a foot is bigger, an injury on one side or the other. And so everybody that I was working with personal training, I'm like, whoa, we need to address this guy's posture. His back he needs to strengthen and just even become aware of his back, because if he's going to be squatting heavy weight, it's not going to be safe for his spine, or if he's trying to do that. So what I realize is that step one is like, figure out where the imbalances are, and then move in a way that is corrective and supportive of that. And that's how we grow, man.
That's exactly how you grow.
Yeah. It's hard to grow if you're just always comfortable and cozy all the time. Yeah. And
Because then you're not prepared for when you're forced to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because there are moments in life where you're going to be forced to be uncomfortable, and not knowing how to react in those moments.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've had those moments in my life where I might have been comfortable or whatever, and then all of a sudden, you get thrown a curveball or whatever the case may be, and now you're uncomfortable and you're not prepared to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like there's a little bit of training that goes into that.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're prepared when life throws you that curveball.
Yeah. It's like, I trained ninjutsu with my teacher, Ben, in Vermont, and he's an affiliate of New England Ninjutsu.
Okay.
And, there's the sensei and there's the uke, there's the teacher and then there's the student. The uke is the one who receives the damage, right, or receives the technique. And that always, most everything is some kind of pain or off balancing, and distraction, like as we move in that way, like the ninja, like the samurai, these styles that are fused through this Bujinkan ninjutsu lineage. And so feeling that pain, like, whoa, my wrist is locking up. Whoa, yes, whoa, like that's the spot, so without going through that and being locked up and feeling that discomfort, I wouldn't know how to get out of that situation, or God forbid I ever have to use those tools. I don't want to ever, only in self-defense, right? But it's good to have them in my back pocket.
Yeah,
prepared. And it makes me just feel more comfortable and, hopefully everybody's a little safer if I'm there.
For sure.
Yeah.
So listen, Len, I appreciate this. Has been an awesome conversation. We've never had a chance to actually sit down and connect. We've had some in passing through program and kind of some small conversations while different activities were going on. But this was definitely a huge part of my agenda, was to be able to get someone like yourself on and just have this really deep-seated conversation and get to learn a little bit more about you and your experiences and some of your wisdoms that you bring. And boy, I think that's been a treat here today on the podcast. And so, I just want to express my total gratitude for you carving out a couple hours of your Monday morning here on a busy week for you to sit down with me and really share some of your stories and your experiences with the podcast and those that are listening. And, congratulations again on your engagement and getting married on Friday, and you deserve it. You deserve everything. And so, if anyone was listening, so you've got your own online content. So if anyone's interested in kind of learning about what you do, where can they find, Len Mackey's Ancient Earth Skills?
Yeah, that's it. Ancient Earth Skills -- Len Mackey is the YouTube. And then Ancient Earth Skills on Instagram and on Facebook. The school is Ancient Earth Skills. I originally put the Ancient Earth Skills on YouTube without my name, and it ended up being some like heavy metal video that would come up, and I'm like, oh, shit, that doesn't really work.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I got to put my name on there so people could actually find it.
Yeah.
And that worked, and since then it's been there like that. So yeah, Ancient Earth Skills with Len Mackey. I'm happy to be of service and to teach. Starting a homeschool program actually here in the North Country, after school, 2 to 6 on Thursdays. Kids 8+ that are mature and eager to learn are welcome. And also I encourage parents and elders and family to come and join in the fun as well, because I'm a fan of multi-generational learning and all that stuff too. We're going to be doing like primitive pottery and fire making. We're going to do some fishing trips, and yeah, it's going to be fun. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I highly recommend reaching out to Len. Like I said, I have the experience of working with him and seeing really the education and the knowledge and the joy that he has from the perspective of working with youth. But I can tell in just conversation, really quite anybody with an open mind and a level of interest to really consider reaching out to Len. And it's been great to have you.
It's been so fun here. Yeah, I feel blessed to be here, and
it's a good conversation.
Yeah, super good.
Yeah.
You never know what what a connection will bring up in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's always new and alive.
It's authentic and just
Yeah.
raw and unfiltered and,
Yeah.
and no agenda. That's why I came up with the name Into the Fire, right? Because the people that we have on have been into the fire, have come out, have been able to share their stories and their experiences. But at the same perspective, it's the same as sitting around a campfire. You know, if you're sitting around with a group of people, that's just that raw, authentic conversation that comes out. And it's really some of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
And, you know, what comes of that, the storytelling.
Baptism by fire.
Yeah, baptism by fire. That's right.
But yeah, just connection and warmth,
Yeah.
really. The warmth of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
man.
I look forward. Hopefully we'll have you on again. And, you know, I want to talk after the podcast and just see about, you know, what we can do to connect and bring things together. So
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So that leads me into Forge and Freedom. So last week we launched our side quests, which are our no-cost, just one day, couple hour adventures. This past weekend, well, yesterday, we did our first side quest. We did a cold plunge and campfire. We had coffee. We jumped in the St. Lawrence River. It was a chilly 50 degrees, 6:30 in the morning. It was early, but what a great way to really just reset your mind, reset your body, be ready for the day and the week ahead, and sit around with the people to have some really good conversation and talk about goals and challenges for the week. And so next week we have coming up is our second week of side quests. We have the sunrise hike of Big Slide. Big Slide is one of the 46 high peaks in the Adirondacks. I have done this before. It is one of my favorite sunrise hikes. It's an early morning. We're meeting at 4 a.m. at the Garden Trail, Trailhead Parking, in order to get up to catch sunrise around 6:30. Not have to rush, be able to accommodate anybody in the group. And I plan on bringing the jet boil, breakfast sandwiches, and the coffee. So if you're looking or interested in doing that, reach out to us at forgeandfreedom.com. You can sign up for that event. And you can see all the other fall side quests we have planned, including our Brotherhood Breakthrough Weekend in November. With that said, this is a wrap for episode 2. I want to thank you for joining us and for listening to this podcast. I hope you're able to take something away from this conversation with myself and Len Mackey. And